I'm sitting here with Audrey Chirenje. Good morning, ma'am.
Morning, Marisa. How are you? It's a bit nippy today.
It is nippy. It's looking cool, though, because it's been blazing all the time. But you look lovely.
You too.
Thank you. We're going to get straight into the book that we're discussing today. This book is called 1 Week in December by Stephen Ndiyamba. Oh, my goodness. You know, sometimes I'm always talking about challenging yourself to the limits. What kind of limit are you going to challenge yourself? And this book is talking about an exhilarating journey up Mount Kilimanjaro. Audrey, can we unpack this book right now?
Yeah, so this book was one of those books whereby, you think you've read everything up until you come across such a book. He calls it a travel log. So he's talking about travel. And then Steve he's a father, he's an engineer, he's a mining exec, and he's a cyclist, and he's into sports. So he says when they started to decide on going up to Mount Kilimanjaro, the company he works for after COVID, they then embarked on so many, sporting activities, social activities. So some were doing swimming, cycling, golf, etc., just to keep fit and just to, interact and bond as a staff. So that was the basis of this.
That led up to the Mount Kilimanjaro climb.
Definitely. And I think for, adrenaline junkies, I think it's always a thing also to tick on their bucket list that
I did this.
So the team was roughly about 20 people, and I was glad to see two women. There was Marilyn and Yvonne. I think our Yvonne, who runs the fitness center, she was part of this crowd. And in total, when they went up the mountain, they were like 90, because you've got your travel people, you've got your porters, all sorts of people are part of this team. Yeah.
What an incredible journey. It reminds me of Pastor Tom. Pastor Tom also went on the Mount Kilimanjaro climb. And I remember sitting in the service and he was just unpacking and explaining the journey of, the pain you feel, the kind of lessons you learn. And there was so much about lessons. So let's talk about some of the lessons that come out in this book that Stephen highlights.
All right, so I'll go into a quote first, which is a funny one. He says, "I felt pains in places I didn't know existed."
Wow.
So this comes from what you're actually saying, that there will be tears of fatigue, pain, bewilderment, everything, all those emotions you can think of, because they traveled 77 kilometers in 8 days. And the weather conditions, there's intermittent rain, there's snow in the morning. He says they would wake up and they would find their tents, packed with ice. And so he says it was just, I like the fact that they did devotions every morning. And then even their porters and their guides, they actually acted as, just giving them motivation and just giving them the strength to go on, because it was such a difficult and tumultuous journey.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. Imagine you're climbing upward. Imagine you're in a plane and, when you go up, you can actually feel it by yourself. But you're on foot. We're talking about ice. We're talking about rain. We're talking about bouts of sunlight and heat. And I know that there's a level on the mountain where you just begin to puke and to let out everything in your body uncontrollably. And that's the breaking through to the next level. And it kind of brings me to a lesson in life where we go through so much nonsense, but then we have to push through. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so there's one of the colleagues called Anesu. They actually mentioned that at some point the dizzy spell just hit him and it would not go. So he was dizzy most of the time. But in terms of the lessons, like what you're saying, he even mentions that, like what you're saying, you think in life you've gone through stuff, but up until you take such a hike, you then realize that, there's nothing that you can't surmount if you put your mind to it. So even reflecting back now, he says, how when you're going on a journey, people always moan about the kilometers, that is going to be long, it's going to be difficult. He now says whenever he's traveling, he puts a pause. You know how we must put a pause on life and just get out of the car and breathe the air and see everything else, the nature, and just actually appreciate.
And that's I guess touching on self-discovery.
Self-discovery, self-development, resilience, all those emotions, because even the last chapter of the book, he talks about the lessons that he got from that climb, and now that is even impacting in his own personal life with his family and his children and his wife, and also at work, because he works for for a mining company. So he says even how on the climb they had rules, they had guidelines, there was no room for compromise.
Right. You have to stick to the rules. You can't be the superhero.
No. So I think even with his job in mining, it has to be precise and you have to follow the rules.
Wow, this is so much lessons. I like what you said when they started kind of preparing for this, obviously, from COVID. And you know how many people we lost through COVID? Obviously, some of them are related to not being maybe fit enough. And this really promotes health. That's also another lesson on.
It does. And you find that even to prepare, they had to prepare for this. So it was the run. Some of the colleagues did the Victoria Falls Marathon. Mm-hmm. Some of them did the oceans in South Africa. Some were jogging. Some were cycling. All sorts of exercise just to get themselves fit. So also, the other lesson is in life, if you're about to go on something great, you have to prepare.
You have to prepare.
Yeah, you're not just going to go. It's not going to cut it.
Yeah.
This one, you have to prepare your supplies. If you look at the pictures, there are pictures in the book of the backpacks. They would pack and unpack because they had to make sure they took just the essentials. No room for any freely funny things.
Wow, and it's just your backpack, hey?
Yeah.
It's nothing else. And imagine not bathing.
8 days. But they had wet wipes and all that. But yeah, he was talking about how we think bathing is so important. It's actually overrated because they did this.
Yeah, they did this. And you know what, Audrey, look, I'm just flipping through these pages. These are some of the pictures. I have goosebumps. Imagine you have just a little tent out in the open. This is high self-discipline. You need to be really disciplined to go through something like this. Do you want to walk us through that?
So he talks about how it's just not the physical. So it's also the emotional, mental. So I think you have to prepare mentally, then prepare physically, and then also prepare for any eventualities because these will then happen. Mm-hmm. But they did it. And the guides, the porters, he talks about how at every level they'll celebrate. So he also talks about consistency and celebrating small wins,
milestones. My goodness,
because they add up to the final climb on Mount Kilimanjaro.
And that's, I guess, that's what makes it worthwhile to just celebrate the little victories that you have. Because sometimes we're really so hard on ourselves. I know I've been hard on myself in this year. I'm already this age and I have not achieved this. But then I'm here talking to you. This is fantastic. A nominee.
100%. So you know what? We are great in our own ways. He even jokes about how people would joke about the pot belly. You know how it is with men a certain age. Yeah. But all that, they did it. They did it.
Wow, guys, this is a phenomenal book. We just don't have a lot of time to really go into it more. But where do we find this book?
So this book, he's got his distribution very correct. It's on Amazon online, Harare Barbershop Newlands, a couple of Econet stores, Newlands, Mabarane, Gweru, Bulawayo, Kwekwe, and the price is $20. And this is a great book. We need to expand our reading and explore different genres of books.
Wow. We really do. This is a great book. Stephen Ndiyamba. Fantastic book. I've got goosebumps. I haven't even read it, but just looking at the pictures and some of the things that he's stating in this book is absolutely fantastic. I think this is a great read for you out there. We found out we're getting it at Econet stores, some select Econet stores, and the barbershop in Newlands as well. Please make sure it's also on Amazon. $20, just $20 to kind of challenge you to see if you can do something like this. Audrey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you,
Beautiful
Marisa.
Tuesday morning. We will see you again next week, huh?
Awesome, thank you.
Konapo, Ipapo pa ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294, the place to be.